Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to NISM. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. So I came across this video where white people, black people are also talking about systemic racism and also seeing an Asian woman being really mean to black people about systemic racism shows a lot. When I tell you that I call them cunning, I have so many reasons of calling them cunning, and that is who they are. So systemic racism is something that has been built over years to oppress people that look like me, to deprive them of some certain benefits. Now, when you look at police brutality, when you look at segregation, redlining, Jim Crow, and all that, were all the things they used to set my own people back, right? Now, for example, as a black person, there are some places you might go to buy houses, and they will tell you that, that you cannot buy a house there. Why? Because you are a black person. And maybe when you bought a house in some certain areas as a black person, the value of the something will depreciate and all. Those stories they give and excuses. The same thing with jobs and all that. See, I am going to say this. If you do not understand Black history, Black experience, the best thing you can do yourself is not to talk about it. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because if somebody comes to my town, I am Igbo, and talk ill about Biafra, what happened during Biafra, I will be sad actually. Let's get into this video.
Systemic racism is hidden from white people in America. So I've been making a lot of videos about race over the past little bit, and because of that I've had a lot of conversations with white people over racism in America. And something they have all said when they disagree with my points is they act like racism is a thing of the past or that they're isolated incidents, not racism as a whole. And from their perspective, I understand why. How could a racist country have a black president? How could a racist country have rich black people? If a black person can rise to any level in American society, then how are we racist? You all aren't willing to let it go and want to be the victim. And so many of them said this that I started to realize that this was a taught response for white people. And I think I've probably said the same thing before. So I started to look into this and I learned something. The systems of racism in this country are designed to be hidden from white people and to keep white people colorblind. And it works exceptionally well. In the 50s and 60s, you would have to be literally blind and deaf to not see racist systems in this country. But today, you could go your whole life as a white person thinking American racism is a thing of the past, and that's exactly what the people in power want you to think. And it's in part the fault of white people who choose to remain ignorant when presented with the facts, but they're also victims of a system that rewards complacency. Why would we change? It doesn't benefit us in any way to acknowledge systemic racism. Remaining ignorant is the white survival strategy. But what's crazy is just how powerful this system is, and it still manages to be hidden from white people. You can find systemic racism in education, healthcare, housing, employment, immigration, hell, even environmental racism. It is everywhere, yet white people still have to go out looking for it to see it. There's a lot more about this, but I'm going to end it here. If you're a white person watching this video, I heavily encourage you to learn more about systemic racism because it will teach you a lot about yourself and you'll join the ranks of white people that want to change. Martin Luther King Jr. said that white and black folks are tied together in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. And by deciding to change, it's our first step towards generational change. And one day, the system will fall apart because there's no one left willing to uphold it. And that'll be all, guys. Peace.
You don't understand that this past election went the way that it did largely because white people don't experience racism. And I'm saying this about white people on both sides, regardless of who you voted for. This election went the way that it did because white people don't experience racism. Like, white people do not experience bigotry and prejudice off of the fact that they are white. And whenever we try to talk about how racism is prejudice plus power, and I don't even think that ever needs to, like, cross your lips in order to prove that white people don't experience racism. But, like, every single time we try to say that, there's always a white person that's racism when race bad. And it's like, oh, really, Timmy? Did you figure that out yourself? Like I was saying, I don't think you need to ever say like prejudice plus power, because white people prove on a daily basis. And again, this is true for white people regardless of how they identify politically. White people prove on a daily basis that they don't experience racism. 100%. And we know this to be true because of the way in which white people interact with and react to racism. And it's finally dawned on me when I heard about what happened at Jasmine Crockett's recent town hall, where there were anti-her people who came up and said, like, the first thing out of one of their mouths was, why are you a fake ghetto hood rat? Which, don't get me wrong, is a terrible thing to say, but also really fun, because it proves that this person just views black vernacular and black mannerisms as ghetto. As in, for her, that's the default in her mind. And another white person spoke up and asked why Jasmine Crockett is racist against white people, which again, really bad, but also really helps to paint this picture. You wouldn't be calling people simply talking about racism and the way in which racism influences our everyday lives. You wouldn't be calling us racist if you actually experience racism. Because like people who have actually experienced racism fully understand that just talking about race and the way in which race influences politics, that's not racist. Like when you've actually experienced racism and you got a lot of that experience under your belt, like you know what's real racism and what isn't. When you don't and you only have a surface level understanding of what racism and just bigotry as a concept is, maybe you don't really experience that shit, dog. The biggest kicker is that white people, and again, regardless of the political spectrum, white people as a group lack the ability to empathize with people who have experienced racism. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. How can you understand or share something that you don't have and have never experienced? Look at the way in which white people act when it comes down to the N-word, right? White people will always say it is just a word, but then fight tooth and nail to be able to say it to you in public at a Denny. And like what's going on right now with the Cincinnati brawl, where the cops are saying that they're not going to, or they don't see themselves arresting any white people anytime soon, even though we have video footage that shows white people antagonizing black people before the whole brawl took place, with a white person smacking a black person and also calling them the N-word. Every single time white people get messed up because they said some shit to a black person that they have no business saying, there's always a slew of white people who are like, well, it's just words. I don't understand why they beat somebody up over some words. Exactly. You don't understand because you've never experienced that. You don't have, and you've never lived through the experience that comes from the weight of that word and the other things around it. It is because white people don't experience racism that they could go out and vote for somebody like Donald Trump, and why racism was not a deal breaker for them, and why they did not think it was all that bad. Like me, I've experienced racism. So even though I know that for the most part he talks a lot of bad shit about Mexican people, I can look at that and I can understand that also does not mean good things for me either. Because you know why? Because I've experienced racism. I kept bringing up the political spectrum, like how this is true regardless of where you align on the political spectrum. Because if white leftists could actually empathize with people of color when it comes down to racism and experiencing that shit, white leftists would have done everything in their power to ensure that man did not get into office. White leftists would have taken this election a lot more seriously than they fucking did. But because white people don't experience racism, they didn't. White people, regardless of political affiliation, drastically underestimated how bad shit would get in this country. Why? Because white people don't fucking experience racism.
Racism that I've experienced here in America. What system is racist? I think the only racism we've actually seen recently, systemic racism that we've seen, is the application of systemic racism against white people. The University of Western Washington, for example, has been trying to segregate dormitories, using black-only dormitories because black people feel safer amongst each other. You have King Von rapping about killing other black men. Why should I think that the white man is the oppressor?
You need to think about me as your mama. Do not talk to me in that fashion. So let's check that now.
The funny thing was that he was so respectful. I tortured myself to watch this whole interview. Oh my God, this episode literally drove me insane. But you know what? That lady always gets extremely cooked. And he was so respectful, so intelligent as he always is. He always brings his facts to the table. But you know what it was? Oh, talk to me like I'm your mama. No, because you're not. you're my debate opponent, so I'm going to talk to you like as if I'm debating you. But the problem was that she couldn't stand the heat. She couldn't take all the facts that he was just throwing at her. Just flames, 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 flames. She was like, oh my God, I can't take it. Don't talk to me like that. The ignorance started to project itself. It's because she went to college and got that degree in African American studies didn't make her any smarter. She couldn't argue with reality, so she had to go on a tangent about a bunch of shit that had nothing to do with the topic. She is not his mother and tried to demean him and bring down his intelligence because he was cooking the shit out of her.
There's no systemic racism. There's no systemic racism that I've experienced here in America. The only racism we've actually seen recently, systemic racism that we've seen, is the application of systemic racism against white people.
Amanda's face right here says it all. Because literally, what are you saying, bro? To pretend as if there's no systemic racism against black people in America is an absolutely extremely wild take. Do you know that black Americans are more likely to be stopped, searched, and arrested and given longer sentences for the same crimes that white people have committed? Now let's talk about homes and obtaining a mortgage. Numbers show that there's still discrimination in obtaining a mortgage, there's still redlining, and even sometimes with appraisals. Black-owned homes are appraised for way less than white homes that are comparable in the same neighborhood. Now let's talk about healthcare. There's medical bias within pain treatment. Black patients are less likely to be prescribed pain medicine than white patients for the same condition. So saying that there's no systemic racism is ignoring mountains of evidence and trying to flip it into racism against whites. Completely distorts the meaning of systemic racism.
What I have learned in black and white is that the enemy is not black people or white people. The enemy is feelings. The white people of today, in general, feel like they don't have an obligation to fix anything. Why? Here is what they say. I didn't kidnap anyone. I didn't enslave anyone. I didn't segregate anyone. I didn't beat or lynch anyone. I didn't stop anyone from living in certain neighborhoods. You get the picture. Whatever the crime, fill in the blank. White people are saying that they were not involved directly in any of these crimes against black people. I ask this question: who out there likes to be accused of a crime they did not commit? If my father committed a crime, would I want to be accused of his crime? Because of the crimes of the past, are the descendants of the perpetrators of those crimes better off, worse off, or about the same today? Socially and economically, are white people today, in general, better off than black people because of the racist institutions, racist laws, racist culture of the past? Do you know where the word institutionalized racism comes from? It comes from the infrastructure that was built in the past: the Constitution, legislature, and courts, the banks, the schools, etc. Racism is discrimination, is privilege. The outer skin of institutionalized racism has been dismantled. New laws have been established. Now go deeper. Have the bones of those institutions been dismantled? Have the lungs of those institutions been dismantled? Have the hearts of those institutions been dismantled? If you ask a white person in general, they will say yes. Ask a black person, and in general, the answer would be no. Why is that? Daily experience. White people are on the receiving end of the benefits of those institutions. Black people are on the other end. Everything evolves. Slavery has evolved to be more subtle nuances of today. Whether conscious or unconscious, these biases are there, and it impacts black and brown people every day. White people, you are correct. You are not guilty of the past. But white people, you will be guilty of what is going on today in society if you don't recognize the past. Recognize that the skin of institutionalized racism has been removed, but the bones, the veins, the lungs, and most importantly, the heart of institutionalized racism is still there. Systemic racism exists, making it more difficult for Black and brown people to navigate in society and, as a result, economically prosper and live happier lives in general as a group. I stand with my Black and brown brothers and sisters. I'm unashamed and unapologetic in my support. Complacency is not a plan. Action is needed. It's incumbent upon white people of today to understand the present condition by understanding how we got here. Know the history, read about it, let it sink in. Wisdom will come from that knowledge. Then do your part, however small or large it may be, to be an anti-racist. My name is Joe Bruno with White Response Project.
Systemic racism, does it exist? Now, the reason why this topic came up is because I was scrolling and I came across what Jubilee does. There's a channel, there's a network, there's a page called Jubilee where they have open debates about worldwide topics, racial topics, millionaires versus middle class, things of that nature. And I would love to, at some point, make it to be a guest on that show because there's a million things that I would like to talk about and touch on. And I love a great debate. They don't tend to argue, they tend to debate. So the reason why I mentioned systemic racism, does it exist? Yes. To say it doesn't exist is the definition of being oblivious. Does it hinder you? It can. Can you still be successful throughout systemic racism? Yes. Unless you are that much of a target to where the people that put these systems in place are just targeting you, then the answer could be no. You would have a hard time becoming successful if everybody that puts these systems in place was looking directly at you. So yes, can you be successful? Yes. Does systemic racism exist? Do I have to say yes, or do you know? If you don't know, the answer is yes. In places like mortgage financing and housing and your APR on your car, your credit card, there's so many different things, but to harp on the fact that it exists means that you are succumbing to it. I don't know about you, but I'm a fighter. I understand these things are in play and they exist and they are here. They're very prevalent. They're very much so in existence. But I could sit and harp on that, or I could stay in my lane, create a lane, and push through it. I have the mindset that what God has planned for you, nobody can take from you. What's for you is for you. I don't care what systems they put in place. It doesn't rank higher than what God has in place for you. Just remember that. But yes, do I understand that these things occur? Do I know that there's a lot of different things that hinder people in many ways? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to touch on that and talk about that because it seemed interesting to talk about. Very controversial, but I'm here to express. Part of what I do is expression. A lot of what I do is expression. So that's my take on that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's not argue, but I'm open for debate. Do you believe systemic racism exists, and do you think you can be successful through it? Do you think it hinders you? Let me know. Higher ups, you know it's us.
Hi, let's play a game that I like to call Hot Take, but it fucking shouldn't be. First, we should not be making exceptions, excuses, or allowances for people based on the generation in which they were born. If your grandmother says something racist, bigoted, misogynist, something bullshit, call her out. Call her out. Because unfortunately for all of us, she is still alive in 2025. So she may have been born in the 30s, but it's now 2025. So if anything, she's actually had so much longer than you to figure out how to be a good person. And another thing is so those things have always been bad, always been wrong. And I don't mean illegal, obviously. You cannot convince me that anyone in 1934 in the United States thought that discriminating against someone based on the color of their skin was a morally acceptable thing to do. Now, I think people who are just bad fucking people really benefited from it not being illegal. But that doesn't mean it was okay. That doesn't mean it was right. That doesn't mean they're good people just because they weren't breaking the law. They're still bad fucking people. And if they were that way then, and they're still this way in 2025, they're just bad people. We need good people. We need people who have moral compasses. We need people who have principles and who stand by them regardless of the environment they're in, regardless of who else is in the room. We need people who know right from wrong, okay? And I'm not talking about in a religious sense. I am not religious. But I have this thing inside me that says, would that hurt somebody else? And if the answer is yes, then I don't do it. I just don't do it. And I know that some of y'all really need religion to tell y'all, really need a book, an ancient text to explain this to you, but I'm trying to get you to look inward. I'm trying to get you to understand and trust yourself. You know if something is right or wrong. You know. Now, if you ignore that voice and you instead go look for some justification for the behavior, then you're shitty. You suck. You know that the genocide currently taking place in Gaza, you know that is wrong. You know that is bad. So why the fuck aren't you saying anything about it? Why are you going to a dinner party where that topic is never once brought up? Why aren't you bringing it up?
The Black community has long suffered under the weight of systemic racism and discrimination. As white people, it is our responsibility to use our privilege to support and uplift the Black community. Here are a few ways that we can be better allies. Listen and learn. We need to listen to Black voices and experiences without interrupting or dismissing them. We should educate ourselves on the history of systemic racism and the ways that it continues to impact the Black community today. We should seek out resources, books, and documentaries that help us understand the issues. Next, speak up. We should use our privilege to speak up against racism and discrimination. We should challenge racist comments and behaviors, even if it's uncomfortable. Silence that which perpetuates racism. We should support Black-owned businesses in our communities. We should advocate for policies that support economic justice and equity. Donate to Black-led organizations. Financially support Black-led organizations that are working to address systemic racism and inequality. It can be done through regular contributions or contributing to certain campaigns and initiatives. We should also use our platforms for good as white people. We have access to platforms and audiences that the Black community may not have. We should use our platforms to amplify Black voices and perspectives, raise awareness about issues affecting the Black community, and promote positive change. Be open to feedback and learning from our mistakes, as we will make mistakes along the way. But it's important to acknowledge them, apologize, and learn from them. We should be open to feedback and willing to change our behavior and perspectives as we continue to learn and grow. Being a better ally to the Black community requires a willingness to listen, learn, and take action. It requires us to use our privilege for good. support Black-owned businesses and communities, and speak up against racism and discrimination. It's up to all of us to work towards a more just and equitable society. And being a better ally is an important step. If you like the content and benefit from it, give me a follow.
Having white privilege does not mean that you've never suffered. It doesn't mean that you've floated through life on a cotton candy unicorn cloud of rainbows and sprinkles. It doesn't mean that you've never experienced abuse and poverty, indignation, betrayal, and all these horrible, terrible, difficult things. What it means, very simply, is that your life has not been made harder because of your skin tone, like it has been for Black and brown people. Because we live in a racist, just inherently racist system, it is harder for them because of their skin tone than it is for us white people. That is all that means. You can still experience hard things and poverty. You can still have a really shitty life as a white person. That's not what white privilege means. It just means that it's not been shitty because you're white.
This is all I got from this video, and I am going to say this. Some people actually do not understand the meaning of systemic racism. So for that reason, they tell you what they feel it's racism. If you are not in Black shoes, when I say Black shoes, the Black American shoes, you have no right to speak over their experiences. That young man, the Angola man that was always busy saying that he has been in America for how many years, that he has never experienced systemic racism. If only he knew what systemic racism. Now let me tell you something. Excuse me. You know, there were things that I thought were normal when white people do that I never knew that were racist. I am sure so many Africans may have can say or can tell this particular thing that I am saying. There are so many things they do that I can tell you that are, but we thought they were maybe curious or just being in their petty way. Now, all those things are not petty way. But then let me draw your attention back. The system has been set up to be against people that look like me. It's just like one video that I made yesterday. Maybe you will get to see it about how these people are saying that Black people are lazy. And then looking deep down, why they said Black people are lazy was because Black people stopped working for free. That was when Black people became lazy. When did Black people become lazy? They became lazy in the United States when they stopped being missionaries for white people and demand equal benefit and equal pay as their white counterpart. That was when they become very lazy. Then we'll talk about police brutality and all that. That has always been there. Redlining. See, it's really very unfair that you came from Angola. See, you know why most times I don't like diaspora war, right? But I don't like it because I feel like maybe I am trying to make both parties, but I am not. But what I am trying to advise is that if you do not understand American history, you do not have to go up there and speak nonsense. Yeah, just don't go. Why I'm saying this is because if they come to Nigeria or maybe Angola to speak ill about what you went through, maybe as I am Igbo, we had Biafra war. If they come to mistalk on Biafra war, I definitely would be mad, right? So why do you do the same thing to them? So certain things we do is just what your brain, you are supposed to know that you're supposed to do. But then I keep saying there's something about that Jubilee. I don't know if the people they bring there are paid up to go there and like they have the same mindset and mentality. Yes. So for you to come from Angola and you do not know that there was segregation, there was redlining, there was Jim Crow and all that. All these were the things they use in suppressing people that look like me in United States of America. Some of them till this very moment are not able to buy houses in some areas. Why? Because when you buy, they will tell you that the value of the investment has dropped. Because you are a black person. Have you ever calling? I mean, there are some black people that sound white. Calling for a job, getting a job, and going there and they're asking you, oh, I thought you were not black. It's really not nice that you all, some of you, Angola, I think Angola is a rich country. Some of you move to other countries, right? Maybe you are made, your family is made. That doesn't mean that every other person is made. And that is also, you do not have any right to speak over people's experiences. That is not okay. This is not okay. I do not tolerate it, and I do not approve of it. It is not a good thing. I need to drink water. I will draw the curtain here. Bye for now.